Hello, everybody. It's Lenny Murphy with another edition of our CEO series of interviews. Thank you for joining myself and my guest. And today I am joined by Bob Fawson, the co-founder of Data Quality Co-op. Of course, you've been around for a long time with lots of other titles we could throw in there, but welcome, Bob. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Lenny.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it. Love getting into these type of conversations. So why don't you talk about Data Quality Co-op and a little bit of your bio? Give us your origin story so everybody can kind of level set on why you're here, why you of all people get to sit in that coveted chair of a conversation with me.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks for giving me a chance to talk about myself, Lenny. It's human nature, so we all like to do it. Well, I've been in the industry for over 20 years. Started at a company called Western Watts, based in Utah. Watts stand for Wide Area Telephone Service. So everything I know about telephone research, I learned by building a panel at a telephone research business. And we called that panel Opinion Outpost, merged the company with SSI in 2011. And then I spent, over a decade with SSI and subsequently Dynata, playing product and strategy and operational executive roles, and learned a lot about this business. My interests were always in academic research until I found market research, and more particularly found the sample space. I think it's so interesting to think about the inputs that drive so many outputs and so many decisions across the world. After Dynata, spent a little bit of time at Numerator, helping them build their survey research business. Learned a tremendous amount. First time in my career working primarily with brands and working primarily with behavioral data. Mm-hmm. And now we founded the Data Quality Co-op.
Well, that's probably a good segue then, because I was going to ask, what you're most excited to be working on now, but I'm guessing it is your baby, Data Quality Co-op. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So, I maybe kind of tying back to the introduction, thinking about the most fun I've had in my career. Some of those moments were really the early days at Western Watts, figuring out how to build a panel and how to do it in a way that got our clients excited about the quality of the data they were receiving. And, after a couple of decades doing that, I had a lot of deep thoughts about, what works well in our space and what's broken. And with the Data Quality Co-op, it's a chance to think about how to help both buyers and sellers solve their biggest kind of day-to-day dilemmas. Buyers who struggle to know really the quality of the data they're buying before they make a purchase or before they use it, and sellers who are struggling to differentiate and make the business case to invest in quality. And so what we're trying to do is build a business that could provide transparency to quality and help both buyers and sellers make better decisions. And that really animates me.
And it is not just another, Imperium or, a kind of fraud detection software, which no shade on those companies. They do a great job. What's the angle that you guys are taking that adds a whole other level of value towards all of the other existing ecosystem around fraud detection?
So I think there are two fraud quality challenges to solve, whether it's fraud or whether it's attention.
Yeah.
The first is very much a technical challenge, and I'm with you, Lenny. No shade on anyone who's engaged in the kind of Sisyphean task of managing fraud. I feel really good about all the investment that's going into these technical data quality platforms, management platform solutions. I think there's a second challenge that maybe goes underappreciated, and we'll dive into that. You did a podcast with JD recently where you talked about that. It struck a few chords with me. But I think it's a coordination challenge. So every time somebody uses a Research Defender or Imperium or runs a speeding check or uses Roundtable to evaluate an open end or RedM, that goes into a data table and nobody ever looks at that again. Mm-hmm. And so like how some futures markets operate or credit reporting agencies, we're collecting those signals from our clients We're giving them BI tools to make more holistic decisions about their procurement. And then we're also aggregating and normalizing those to put, quality outcomes in context. Are you buying from a source that consistently over delivers on your quality expectations? Because that source should be able to grow their business and grow their share. And that buyer should introduce less risk into the recommendations. That agency who's buying should have less risk in kind of making recommendations to the brands who are their clients. And so that's kind of the idea, is through a clearinghouse and through providing more transparency, that everybody at the front end of the research process can make more informed decisions about the quality of what they're buying, such that the outputs are better, or at least more fit for purpose.
So, chatting beforehand, you brought up, Verisk as an example, but I would just, I also hear Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, all of those companies. But the difference is, are you applying that at the individual level or at the supplier level, or both?
Yeah, I think it's both. And, of course, any kind of data about an agency or a supplier is really just the aggregate of the performance of the individuals over time, regardless of where those quality signals are being generated, whether it's in a survey or through some sort of outside of survey technical tool.
Okay. So, and today, your clients are primarily buyers, agencies, as kind of the tip of the spear, the primary buyers of research. Totally get that use case. But I would imagine that if you are a sample company, especially a marketplace, that you would both look at this as, wow, this is awesome, and oh, I don't know, I don't know if I want to know what's in my sausage, right? I mean, unfortunately. So what does that use case look like for you in the future of how all of the key stakeholders in the industry can leverage the platform? And by the way, listeners, this is not a sales pitch for Data Quality Co-op. This is, as Bob mentioned, you check out the Remote podcast with that recently did, and lots of actually podcasts I've done on this topic. This is a fundamental issue for the industry. It's existential in my view. So I do want to hear about this, Bob, because Lord knows we need better solutions, or else we're going to be in real trouble. So
yeah.
Well,
I think there's maybe three answers to your question. The first is, I've spent the vast majority of my career on the supplier side of the business. So just personally, where do I have the most empathy? It's for the dilemmas of suppliers. And, my intention is to provide suppliers with tools to differentiate, whether that's differentiate their company and brand, or wouldn't it be great if you received a proposal? Here's the quality we deliver on average. Here's 2x at a different price point, and here's 0.5x at a different price point. And depending on the question you're trying to answer, any three of those bundles might be the right choice. And so, I'm engaged with suppliers across the ecosystem as design partners, and making sure that we understand their concerns, their fears. But ultimately, what I think a supplier gets out of this is they get visibility into how their sample performs inside the surveys at the agency buyers. They may get a reconciliation request today, but they don't know that, for publisher X, where they're spending $100,000 a year recruiting consumers, they don't know that over indexes on low quality open ads, or speeding, or technical quality fails. And so, if I'm at a supplier, I'm going to spend my incremental dollar on a source that's going to not just produce a join form, but produce kind of a stream of clean data that will build trust with my clients and build my brand over time. And that's how they grow. I think trust is something in the kind of procurement decision-making process that's becoming more important.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really cool. So the good housekeeping seal of approval, so to speak, of the when we stop recording, hang on a minute, because there's actually a couple thoughts I had on that, but I don't want to get into on this. that is cool and exciting. But along came AI, right? And lots of conversations about synthetic sample. On not asking as many questions, as we build up these repositories of information that we can mine. So, what's the future look like to you, right? When we're coming in, that obviously data is fundamental, but how we use it and the business models that we currently operate within are likely going to change, at least in my thinking. So, what do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I guess we have some smaller scale parallels. People are comfortable making big decisions off of smaller sample sizes through qualitative when they feel like the individuals they're talking to have been validated in some kind of extraordinary way. And I view AI really similarly. Like, if you're going to model that data over and over and over again, and you're going to use it to inform more decisions than a kind of traditional survey data set, you should be more and more interested in the quality of the inputs.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, a healthy shift toward AI will be equal part kind of development of models and of evaluating the training data sets and making sure that the data we collect and feed those models with is data we feel comfortable about amplifying using AI. And so I'm very optimistic about that future. I'm very excited to see it, and the kind of shift towards digital qual and kind of qual at scale, I think, is a precursor of how that might look as AI grows.
Yeah, I agree. It will be, as the need to, my supposition is, every question asked will become more important going forward.
Yeah.
And if that is the case, then knowing that we're getting the right information from the right people is equally important.
And I think that presents some challenges for the way that we manage quality in the industry today, as AI generated data becomes looks more and more like survey data. The quality discussion, I think, should shift less from evaluating outputs and more towards evaluating the inputs.
Mm-hmm.
Did the training data set come from people who we've seen before, have been thoughtful before, have a history with, are real people? Because ultimately, we want to make sure that the inputs we're putting into those models are high quality, because the outputs are going to look very natural to us, and they'll become, I think, increasingly difficult to distinguish from traditional survey data.
Yeah, I agree. I've already seen examples of that. Right.
Yeah.
There are platforms in sales right now that are both qualitative and quantitative, that if I did not know what was happening, I would think that those were real live respondents in the traditional paradigm, and they are not.
Yeah.
So yeah, interesting times.
Very much.
Yeah.
It's interesting too. I don't think this is all that unique. So, and this is why I never get invited on other podcasts, Lenny, because I was having a beer and checking out the Chicago Mercantile Exchange website a couple weekends ago, thinking about, like, we talk about sample or data being a commodity. Like, how do other commodities markets work? And I was shocked by the variety of just wheat. If you dig into all their information about wheat, I don't know, there's 20 types of wheat, and there's 20 gradations of that wheat. And, all of that is graded, and there are standards, maybe a little different than sample. But, if you're going to ship that wheat, it's got to be low moisture content. If you're going to make organic bread, it's got to be something different. And one of the things that I would like to see in our space is thinking about sample, whether we call it a commodity or not, or thinking about data and saying, what am I trying to build with that input? Do I want, I'll end with the wheat analogy, but do I want the organic kind of low moisture content, high protein content, or am I trying to confirm something that, I'm not quite sure about? Maybe We've all used the term cheap and cheerful. There's a world for that.
There
And
is.
I think the biggest problem is the lack of ability to differentiate, because then nobody trusts each other. They don't quite know what they're getting.
Yep. Agreed wholeheartedly. I was actually a guest on a podcast right before this conversation with the AYTM, and and went to the same place. Like, look, there is a role for cheap fast, surveys, which is clients know they're throwing away 20-30% already. That's acceptable for certain things. It's not acceptable for other things. So it's what is the consequence of the decision being made, and what is the use case? And same thing with synthetic sample. I've been playing with GPT-01 and to explore personas and just kind of ideate and throw some things out there. It's great. Right now, but also I asked it to do a competitive analysis and it hallucinated. Right. So it's like, I'm not going to, there's just limits on doing this. And we'll just have to adapt to it. But to your point, is garbage in, garbage out, one way or the other, or weed in, weed out.
Yeah, that's right.
Separate the wheat from the chaff. All right, you and I could go on for a long time, and we're trying to keep this relatively short. So you've been around the industry for a few decades now, like me, right? We have to own that. We're old, dude. So. And you would assume that we have some experience, some lessons to learn, some wisdom. So lay it on us, Bob. What are some of the key lessons that you have learned that we can impart to our audience?
Well, first, I feel like I need to defend myself. I may be old, but I still feel young. Sorry,
I was projecting. I probably shouldn't have done that. So apologies, Bob. Go ahead. You're young. I'm old.
I don't know. With each passing year, I realize how little I know, and I wish I would have learned to have a better mix of humility and confidence earlier in my career. Because as I look back, humility, confidence, and kind of patience. So I think at times when my career has been rewarding, or when I've been growing professionally, I've been equal parts frustrated and equal parts open to learning, and equal part just working as hard and as well as I know how. And so, this is kind of a fun industry, because I think at its best, you meet people who are intellectually curious and who are interested in informing the world with better data. And so I feel very fortunate to have worked in this environment. And I guess the only lesson worth repeating is, your work is one input, but kind of being open to learning from everyone else in this space is the second one. And it maybe took me longer than it should have to figure that out.
That is great feedback. You don't often hear about humility, people talking about that combination that characterizes humility plus confidence. That I think of my own career, and I had imposter syndrome for a long time, because I over-indexed on the confidence part, and and under-indexed on the humility. And somewhere down the line, through that balanced out. Through learning from other folks.
It is kind of tough, though, isn't it? Like, even at this point, I'm first-time founder, so and lots of years working in larger companies, so it's almost inevitable that there's always a little bit of that imposter syndrome where you kind of become experienced in something new. But I think that's good too. And I always aspire to be 100% confident, but totally open to the evidence and very quick to change my mind when I realize I was wrong. Easier said than done.
Easier said than done. Yes, I always say to myself, I'm first one to admit that I'm wrong. I'm just never wrong. So at least that's what my wife says about me. Those are great lessons. So last bit as we wrap up. So those were life lessons. Any specific advice that you would offer to folks that are listening, that are growing? You're the first time entrepreneur after decades in the industry. So any advice that you would offer?
I think, in this period of rapid change in the industry, I guess it feels like we've just come out of a period of rapid change, and AI is shepherding us towards a new one. I think if you're new in the industry, don't be scared to acquire new skills. I feel like, early in my career, I went and took some data science and database management classes at the local university in my spare time. And that opened up so many worlds just in terms of being able to communicate with people across the enterprise about different topics and understand things. And I think if you're, maybe a little bit later in your career in the industry, don't underestimate the connections you've made and the knowledge you've built. I'm continually surprised by people who've been willing to reach out and help me on my entrepreneurial journey. And a little bit of so much of our professional discourse is now on LinkedIn. That's great, love it. I learn a lot there. But don't be scared to pick up the phone and ask, because there's a wealth of support and knowledge out there, and I think a lot of us under leverage that.
Yep, agreed wholeheartely. So I'm blessed to do this for this part of my living, because I have an excuse to talk to people. So
That is nice.
yeah, it's a fringe benefit for sure. All right. Thank you, Bob. It's been a great conversation. Best of luck on Data Quality Co-op. I think we'll hear more and more about this. At least I hope that we do. And where can folks find you?
Well, you can find me at Bob Fawson at dataqualitycoop.com. Reach out anytime. And Lenny, thanks for the opportunity. This is fun. It's been just wonderful to reconnect.
No, I'm glad, and I feel the same way. So ditto. It won't be the last time, that's for sure. All right, so we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you to our producer Bridget. Thank you to our audio editors, Big Bad Audio. Thank you to sponsors, and most importantly, thank you to you, our listeners, because you gave an excuse for Bob and I to connect and have this conversation. But that's it for this edition of the CEO series. We'll have another one real soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks.